Welcome back to the Why Mindset Matters podcast. I'm Eslana Loa. I am a speaker, author, resilience mindset coach. I'm a nurse, a midwife, and a mother of 4. And if this is somehow the first episode of mine that you've found, I just want to provide a trigger warning. I do discuss the loss of my teenage daughter Riley to suicide. In this episode, I want to discuss imposter syndrome and how it has shown up in my life and how I'm confident it's shown up in many ways in many people's lives and what we can start to do to combat that, because it really doesn't serve us in any area of our life. I think we can all relate to that voice, whether it is something that screams from your shoulder into your ear or whether it's actually a little bit more subtle and well disguised and in the deeper parts of you and just whispers. I'm sure we can all relate to a point in our life where there's been that negative self-talk or that whisper of who do you think you are? You know, the one that says you're not qualified enough, you're not smart enough, you're not healed enough, whatever it is that we're trying to do in life. And then we've got that negative self-talk that's essentially trying to hold us back from what we're trying to achieve. And it's that voice that keeps you small, and even when our soul is begging to take up space. And I know if you've ever felt like a fraud in your own life, your work, your healing journey, then you're not alone. I'm here to tell you that. And I want to unpack, like I said, why mindset matters more than ever when you're battling that inner critic. And it's not about lacking skill or value or worthiness. And I used to think that it was a protective mechanism that went, you shouldn't be doing that because you're not qualified enough or whatever it was. And maybe in some instances there is a protective mechanism and some validity to it, but more often than not, what I'm talking about is that more toxic self-talk, that more self-sabotaging via imposter syndrome, that suggests that you don't belong here. Wherever here is, whatever you're attempting to do or doing, because sometimes it's there along for the ride and you're actually doing something and doing it really well, but then you're still battling this inner critic that's got this negative talk of who do you think you are to be doing this and things like that. But it's about a disconnect between who I am and what I believe about myself, essentially. It's often a mindset that we've inherited, whether it's from trauma or conditioning or our family of origin, whatever it is. If we maybe grew up being told, be the good girl or be the good girl, be the good boy, or you're the strong one, or you're the fixer or the achiever or the quiet achiever, then your nervous system is going, this isn't safe. Even when what you're doing is the thing that you've worked really hard to do. It's kind of this, like I said, outdated protective mechanism. Even though it's intended by our nervous system to protect us, it's very much outdated and it actually doesn't serve us in succeeding in what it is we're trying to do. And most of the time, what it is that we're completely valid in attempting or achieving or throwing all of this energy at. So who needs enemies, right? When we got in a critic like that, there's an enemy in our own camp. But if we're showing up in the world after loss, after heartbreak, after trauma, whatever it is that you've gone through and you've had to probably rebuild yourself from scratch, and then these opportunities come and your voice gets louder, it can feel like we're wearing shoes that are too big for us, and they're not too big. They're just new, and we just got to get used to them and wear them confidently, because we very much belong in that space, and it's dealing with the part of us that doesn't belong in this space with us, and that's that negative self-talk. Before I started this podcast, I was already writing a book, and I'm currently co-authoring another book as well in the midst of doing that. So I remember, and significantly, so there was little whispers of who do you think you are? You're grieving, you're not perfect, you're still healing, who do you think you are that you think people are going to want to hear this or listen to you or read this book? And there was definitely that deep and soft in the background. But I remember when I got the opportunity to co-author the book in the series of books called Start Over, Turn Any Loss into a Sensational Comeback, with Marco Robinson from the UK. And there's 14 authors in each book in the series, and we all write a chapter. And I was so excited. It felt so aligned with what I had been manifesting. And it was this incredible opportunity that there's no way my ego could have created those connections. I was deep in the experimenting with really manifesting what I wanted my life to look like and the things I wanted to do with my life. And this incredible opportunity came up and I was so excited. And then it all started. And I remember feeling physically sick the first day, almost brought to tears over who the fuck do you think you are to be doing this? And why? Like reading other people's writing and thinking, again, like the last episode that I recorded about comparison being the thief of joy, I had gone from so excited for this opportunity to just looking at the way that other people wrote and feeling so inadequate. And which is ridiculous because I actually do write really well. And when I do get writing and I read it, I'm my own biggest fan. I'm so in awe of the capacity that I have to translate my words, my experiences, my feelings onto the page in such a beautiful way. And it's interesting because my beauty doesn't need to look like your beauty. And the most beautiful thing you can do in life is show up authentically as your authentic self. And doing so is such a powerful gift to offer the world. And so when we put ourselves, our experience, my writing, for instance, next to somebody else's in an attempt to compare, I was putting mine beneath them going, do I even belong in this room in life? Like all these incredible writers. And it stopped me from starting. It held me back. It almost convinced me that I didn't belong here and that it had been a complete mistake and that Marco Robinson, this incredible man in life whose wealth of knowledge and wisdom, had completely fucked up, made a complete mistake by including me in this. And there's this whole downward spiral of negative narrative that was just unraveling me. And it was interesting because this only occurred over a day, but one day of entertaining that kind of negativity when you're not inclined to go there as a person and as a personality, it's not the way that I live, was horrible. To exist within my body during that day and what my physiology and my nervous system was doing was awful. And it was the next day I stopped procrastinating and I recognized the presence of that imposter syndrome and how powerful it was when I thought that I didn't have a negative self-talk. I thought that I didn't really suffer from that, but it came from the deep, dark corners of my soul and it really reared its ugly head and exposed itself to me. And by being able to identify it and label it as what it was and step over it in order to just sit and start writing, I started the next day and everything just flowed and it was incredible. And I'm so happy that I stuck it out and that I actually didn't give in to the evil that is the narrative of imposter syndrome, because we miss out on so much. We miss out on showing up as our most authentic self. We miss out on gifting that to the world, and the world misses out on the best version of ourselves and what we have to offer when we step into the power of who we are and show up as that, or we don't, because we listen to the imposter syndrome and the negative narrative. But it went from a whisper starting my own writing to this very loud scream during that experience and essentially just going, who do you think you are? So there's been a few times throughout my grief journey, for instance, before we lost Riley, I for years taught about conscious parenting and about really being present and living in the present, and losing her rocked me. When I considered returning to my work and the workshops that I provide and the coaching, I had, again, this negative self-talk of who the fuck do you think you are to help people learn how to be conscious parents? And if I had listened, I would have missed out on so much joy in my life. And there's people that would have missed out on the help that I know that I provide when I straighten my crown and I remember who the fuck I am. and that I am exactly the person to help you understand conscious parenting and the power of showing up and living presently, because it was my capacity to do just that that helped me navigate unimaginable loss and these circumstances outside of my control, but free from the guilt and the regret and the remorse that a lot of people would have if they weren't living consciously with their children. Because everything I did came from a place of love. Even having to discipline her came from I just love you, darling. And it was very much a narrative around trying to help her get to adulthood okay, and based from a place of how much I loved her and how much she meant to me. And so there was no version of discipline or anything that came from, like anger or aggression, or aimed at having her feel bad for decisions that she had made, or any way that I would have regretted. So obviously nothing is ever a given, and every interaction we have could be the last time we see someone. And imagine if the last time I had dealt with her, I had said something that I regretted. Having to layer on the guilt and the added negative emotions onto my grief and trauma and the aftermath of all of that would have been horrific, and I'm not sure I would have survived that. So of course I accredit the capacity that I have to be able to navigate my grief and trauma in a way that was slightly kinder to the very things that I had been teaching. And of course I'm well positioned to teach about that because I had a beautiful relationship with him too, Riley. And it wasn't for me to dictate what her term here would be. And I remember in the week after, as we were planning her celebration of life, I said to the lady planning it, if I had known that Riley was only on loan to me for 15 years, I wouldn't have done anything differently. I loved her with every fiber of my being, and she knew that. And I know how much she loved me. And so that in itself is a credit to the conscious parenting. So you can start to see how, if I let imposter syndrome convince me that because I lost a child to suicide or because of things that had unraveled her mental health, therefore I had failed as a parent. And who am I to then teach anything about parenting? I wouldn't continue to show up in the very essence of what was a big part of my superpower and the workshops that I did provide for pregnancy and labor and birth. And that in itself was something that Riley was my biggest fan. She loved and adored watching the capacity I had to positively impact people's lives in such a beautiful way and help them completely avoid birth trauma that was otherwise unnecessary. And so am I going to give up the very thing that she too really loved witnessing my greatness in because some negative talk in me says, sit down? Be quiet. And so you can start to see that regardless of your examples, I'm confident that people have their own examples, and your examples don't need to look anything like mine. They may be completely contrasting and completely different. The difference is if you are doing something with no malicious intent and only good intentions to deliver for yourself, for others, for your loved ones, whatever it is. If your intentions are right and you are willing and able to put the effort in, and you are putting the effort in, and then there's internal dialogue that says, who the fuck do you think you are? Or sit down, be quiet. Then I promise you that doesn't actually belong in this same space as all that effort. And especially when you're implementing the things we've talked about in this podcast and really taking responsibility for your mindset and the lens through which you view your life and having main character energy and really showing up, and especially as you start to show up in your main character energy. If this isn't something that you've done before and you're starting to step into the power of who you really are and the capacity you have to really just show up and impact the world in doing so, of course there's going to be, if you weren't aware before, you're going to be introduced to imposter syndrome, because it is the part of you that wants to stay comfortable. It's the part of you that wants you to sit the fuck down and shut the fuck up, because even though the familiar is uncomfortable, it's a comfortable discomfort because it's familiar. And your ego likes that. It likes the known. It likes the sense of believing it has control even though it doesn't. And so when we step outside of the known, the familiar, and we don't want to continue to accept the discomfort that has become so ingrained as a part of our existence, and it's uncomfortable because we know we're meant for more. We know we're meant for greater, for a greater lived experience, a greater version of our life, whatever that looks like, whatever the boundaries and expectations or how you would define that, it doesn't actually matter. When you you've got that sense of urgency in you that says, this is my one red hot crack at life and I should be running towards my goals as if my soul is on fire, and there's a part of you that knows that you are meant for more because of that, then 100% expect to be dealing with a bit of imposter syndrome. But that's okay. We can deal with it. The thing is, what I've realized though is that imposter syndrome thrives in silence. It grows in the shadows of the dark corners of our soul, and it loves when we don't name it. When we isolate and we wait for permission or perfection, that's a big one. I used to think things needed to be perfect, that I couldn't do it or release it or whatever. And I tell you what, nothing like grief and loss to show you with such gravity how very fragile life is, how short life is, and how nothing is promised, and that all we have is right now. So fuck perfection. Fuck waiting for permission. Who do I need permission from? I have something to say. I have a big heart, no malicious intent, and a good message. Fuck permission and perfection, because here I am in all of my messy glory, sharing my experiences and my lessons and the things that essentially have served me, being able to learn how to live and grieve in the aftermath of unimaginable loss. And so if I can do it 100%, you can too, because there's nothing about me that's special. There is a knowledge base that may have differed from yours in a way that, great, let's share it. So of course I'm here not waiting for perfection. I just want to share it. If there is anything in amongst everything that I'm delivering that helps you in any way, then, and it's just one person, then fucking winning. Because I am here for more than just pain. My life is meant to be more than just loss, and I'm not going to be defined by my origins or by what has happened to me along the way. I am impacted by them, but in a way where I get to choose who I become as a result of that, and who I have decided to become and show up as is a version of me that shares my truth in a raw and honest form, unapologetically, in the hope that it reaches the people that it needs to in order to help you do the same, to help you navigate life and its inevitable challenges and the inevitable, unfortunately, losses that we will face. And no, they're not inevitable in the form of what mine took on, but part of our agreement with life is that we get to live and love and have passion and adventure, but we also have the flip side of that coin, and that's the grief and sense of loss at the absence of the things that we loved and enjoyed in the first instance. And so it is inevitable that we will face loss and have to navigate grief in life. And so I'm here to share my version of all of these experiences in that hope, with that endeavor. So, like I said, imposter syndrome thrives on silence. It loves it. It loves it when it can convince you that it's right, or that maybe it's right, and maybe you should sit down, or maybe your dreams were too big, or your hopes were too hopeful, and it wants you to be isolated so that you kind of feed those feelings. If it's done its job, then you will end up feeding and watering the seeds that it sows with the little, well, who do you think you are? What do you think you're doing? And then sometimes it's our internal effort that contributes to feeding and watering so that this little seed of doubt grows into essentially a massive tree, which with imposter syndrome goes, there you go, there's your evidence. Here is all the evidence of why you need to sit down, shut up, or not try, because and don't get me wrong, you find what you look for. Imposter syndrome will it'll collect all the evidence from across your lifespan of all the ways that you've failed or disappointed yourself or others or embarrassed yourself, and it'll collate all the data to show you why you should not be doing that thing. But the reality is you find what you look for. And if that voice says, who do you think you are? Hang on a minute, I know who the fuck I am. Who do you think you are to be questioning me after everything that I've survived, after everything that I've come through, would be my question to that internal dialogue. I think you've overstayed your welcome. I think that you might have been a part of me from my conditioning or my childhood that my nervous system perceived to be a way of protecting myself, but I don't need you anymore. and your visa's up or your lease is up and it's time to be evicted because this doesn't serve me anymore. And if I want to find what I look for, I'm going to find evidence. I'm going to go looking for evidence and collate it that suggests and reinforces the capacity I have to succeed. The acknowledgement of everything that I bring to this life. Are you kidding? There is no shortage of whatever you look for, good, bad, or ugly, but you look for the good. I promise you're going to end up with a huge pile of evidence that suggests that, oh yes, let me hold the door for you. That's who you are. Because we have succeeded so many times, so many more times in life than we ever give ourselves credit for. We've overcome so many more things in life than we ever give ourselves credit for. There's so many times in life where we're convinced we won't survive, we're convinced we won't succeed, we're convinced we won't last or endure, and yet we did. We're still here. We've survived, endured, lasted through all of it. We're fucking winning. And we need an internal dialogue that is a cheerleader, not an inner critic, telling us that, we're imposters. No, we need someone fangirling the fuck out of us in the dark corners of our soul that's cheering us on because that's what we deserve. Especially when you're showing up, when you're putting effort in life to show up and you're trying to make a positive impact to yourself first and foremost. But in doing so, what you offer the world is so much more. Because imagine if we had all these genuinely authentic people just showing up in their true power and their true form. Imagine. I want to hang out with those people. But like I said, it grows in the shadows if we don't name it. So here's a shift that I want to offer you today, though. It's instead of asking, am I enough? I want you to ask, what if I already am? Because it's a mindset shift. It isn't just about positive thinking. It's about reclaiming the lens through which I view myself. It's about interrupting that old story that's saying, who do you think you are? And saying, this discomfort doesn't mean that I don't belong. It means that I'm growing. Of course, there's a part of me that, if I want to play devil's advocate, of course, there's a part of me that goes, what do you mean you're going to write a book? You haven't done this before. What are you thinking? And that's fine. That's fine, because that's kind of like sometimes our instinct as parents, like, what do you mean you're going to ride a bike or drive a car or do this thing that you haven't done before? It doesn't mean they're not capable. It means they need to fill the gaps between where they are and where it is they need to be in order to be successful and safe in what they're doing. And we know that as parents. So why don't we offer ourselves the same space and healthy selfishness and permission to grow? Because essentially that's what I'm doing. It's when that narrative goes from, what do you mean you're going to write a book, to who the fuck do you think you are? Now it's gone toxic. Now it's gone too far. Okay, I'm going to do something I haven't done before. And yes, there's some gaps that I need to fill between where I am and where it is I need to be, but I started filling those. And it's interesting how when you outgrow your imposter syndrome, it just shape shifts. It finds something else. It's like a nasty fucking cancer that just needs something to grow from. And when you take the life source from it, it just finds another one. So I found a coach, a book coach, and I enlisted her help, which turned out to be in the form of a 12-week course she was offering that really debunked everything that I needed in order to be able to understand everything that I didn't. I knew I had a book in me. I had no idea how you get that out. I didn't even know how to structure it. I didn't know how to publish all the things, and there were many things. And so I did. I filled the gaps and felt more confident and really saw myself growing. And then every time I would step over the procrastination or the tendency to procrastinate and actually start writing, I would just be in awe of what I had to offer. And it's interesting because the negative self-talk of, who the fuck do you think you are? You can't do that, really stopped, because I'd proof that I could. I was fucking doing it. Like, who do you think you are to be questioning me? Because I'm doing it. It didn't go away. It just shape-shifted and leached onto something else, because in amongst that, I wasn't doing one thing at a time, and we never really are we? And especially when it comes to growth. But I thought, I'm going to start the podcast. I'm going to do it. I have no idea how to do it. I have no idea what's necessary, but I work really well under pressure. So I'm going to set a date. I chose the 1st of June because it's the day that I became a parent 23 years ago. So I thought, what better anniversary to have for my podcast, and that happened to be 2.5 weeks from the date that I made the decision. And I did it like that because I thought, well, I work really well under pressure. I'll create pressure. I'll get it done. Watch this shit. And I did. But in amongst it, that imposter syndrome that I thought had gone because I was writing the book, reared its ugly head and said, I'm back, bitches. And it had just leached itself to what do you mean you're going to start a podcast? You don't know what the fuck you're doing. And it's interesting because it's almost like a fight. I was there day in, day out, doing the research, understanding what was involved, how I needed to do it, how I create the art, how I do the recordings, how I edit, how I launch it to every bloody platform. Like, there was so much learning in such a short time, which I knew I was capable of. But whilst I fought this internal dialogue of who do you think you are? And this is on the back end of me thinking, I don't have negative self-talk. Yeah, I do. It just hit a lot better than, and it's interesting because before all of this, so before the podcast, before the book coach, I was writing. And I thought I didn't have a negative inner critic or self-talk. But I'm here to tell you that if you procrastinate, and I'd say I'm a master procrastinator, nothing like wanting to sit down and write to realize how dirty the bathroom is or whatever it was, or that I wanted to be an artist and create art. Man, I went shopping, I bought the canvases, I did I made amazing art. Anything to avoid what it was I wanted to do, which doesn't make sense because why would I avoid something I really wanted to do? And this is where I want to make the valid point that if you find that you are procrastinating in life, especially with regards to something that you wholeheartedly want to do with your life or achieve or study towards or whatever it is, then there's a good chance that you have imposter syndrome that has masked itself as procrastination. And it gets to live with a more willing host because we identify it as procrastination. Oh, I'm good at procrastinating. Or if I pulled back the layers like an onion, then what I found was there was self-doubt. There was, you're not going to sit and write because what are you going to write about? Like, who the fuck do you think wants to hear about your story? Or it's an ugly way of talking. It's a really ugly way. I would never speak to somebody like that. And I would never tolerate sitting next to, listening to somebody be spoken to like that. And yet it was residing at the base of my soul. And I didn't even realize because of the mask it was wearing, because I was kind of, I guess, coding it in humor, like, wow, I really get shit done when I want to do other shit, So you can see how it grows in the shadows when we don't name it. We need to identify it for what it is. If you're finding that there's patterns of behavior that self-sabotage and that get in the way of you succeeding at what it is you actually truly desire, then it needs to be identified. And if you go, I don't really know what I truly desire, then you need to start there. Break it down, get it down to basics of like, what do I really want to do with my life? What do I want to achieve? What do I want to succeed at? And then what are the ways that I am sabotaging myself? Because the thing that stands between you and success is not a lack of capacity or capability. If you're looking to succeed in an area where you don't really have any experience or haven't done that before or whatever it is, the difference between where you are now and where it is you need to be in order to succeed is that there's a series of gaps that need to be filled. Whether it's resources, knowledge, information, education, whatever it is, once you fill those gaps, you're completely capable. That's the beauty of being a human being. Whatever it is that you do right now for a job, you didn't actually know how to do that once upon a time. If you're a builder, there was a time where somebody suggested you come and just frame up a wall. It would have felt overwhelming. But now it's something you do without really having to think about it. As a nurse and a midwife, like, man, even just a nurse. I remember before we gave our first injection, it just seemed like the most scary thing to do. And now I can do anything and put a cannula in, barely even looking. Like, there was once upon a time I was so the thought of delivering a baby would be a scary one, and now it's just a part of who I am. And the difference between who I am now in those skills and the capacity I have to fulfill those roles successfully and who I was when I was petrified was I filled the gaps. I empowered myself. And if I had let the negative self-talk go, you don't know what you're doing. You don't know how to deliver a baby. You don't know how to put a cannula in. You better sit down and be quiet. Oh, I better not go to uni. I better not do that thing. I would never have done the things that my soul was yearning for. I always wanted to be a nurse and a midwife since I was little. And so you can see how when we don't identify it, it gets in the way that it's intending to get in the way. It keeps us small. It keeps our voice quiet, and it keeps us from progressing. Identifying what it is you want to do with your life, with your work, with your whatever it is, any part of your existence. Identify your goals and then work out the things that you do or that you can control and that you contribute to your journey that are getting in the way of that. Whether it's procrastination, whether it's as simple as very evident negative self-talk, but procrastination is a big one. And then being able to address that, being able to work on your mindset and take your power back and reclaim your power by realizing it's about the lens through which I view myself. Because as someone who's come from housing commission and poverty, there has definitely been in my earlier years a lot of imposter syndrome of like, I don't belong here. What do you mean I'm buying a house in this suburb or whatever? What, buying a house at all? Are you kidding me? Like the things that I've been doing uni, let alone 2 different degrees, being able to succeed in life in ways that if I continued to view myself through the lens that I was, it would have been so restrictive. It would have held me tethered to my origins. And that's one thing I was always very certain of. I was not going to be the sum of my origins. I was not going to be defined by where I came from. So it's choosing the lens through which you view yourself, your life, and your capacity to succeed and to define your life the way that you want so that you can actually really interrupt that old story and saying that this discomfort, like I said, doesn't mean that I don't belong here. It means that I'm growing and I don't need to be fearless. I just need to be honest and brave enough and willing enough to actually step over the imposter syndrome that really doesn't serve you. Say thank you, but no thank you, and really start stepping into the power that you have to take on that main character energy and really realize that your potential is actually only yours to define. Nobody else gets to actually define the edges of your potential. And if no one has ever told you this, then you don't actually need more credentials to be worthy of your dreams. You don't need more healing to be a helper. You don't need to wait to be invited. You don't need permission. You are the invitation. It's you, it's the deeper parts of you and your soul that knows that I'm meant for more, that I already am enough, that I'm worthy, and that my goals and hopes and dreams aren't goals. They're memories. I'm coming back to myself. I'm coming home to myself. And that's what this is. So, of course, the ego, which is the part of us that wants things to stay as they are because there's a sense of perceived control in that, is shook. It doesn't know what's going on and it's going to be shattered apart. And that's what needs to happen is our ego gets broken to pieces so that the truest, most authentic version of ourselves can rise to the forefront. And as we step into the power of our main character energy and just create this incredible life that we're so deserving of and that will be so rewarding as a result. So if imposter syndrome is showing up for you right now, then I want you to pause and take a breath and just remind yourself that I'm allowed to take up space. I am not behind, I'm becoming, and that is enough. And if you needed a sign to do the thing, whatever it is, this is it. Consider this your sign. Do it. Do it. Book the trip, do the thing, whatever it is. Write the book, start the podcast, whatever it is. Because the world is waiting for you to show up for yourself and in doing so for them. And if this episode resonated with you, then please share it with someone who needs to hear it. And you can DM me, let's talk about it. If you're ready to rewrite your story in a deeper way, then you know where to find me. And remember that your mindset matters. It always matters, but so do you. And so until next time, I want you to stay grounded, stay kind, but stay kind to yourself. Be kind to yourself in the way that we would so easily be kind to others. And that starts with the way that we talk to ourselves. So I hope that you have enjoyed this episode of Why Mindset Matters. I'm Eslana Lower. You can find me on Instagram at Eslana Lower. I very much look forward to sharing everything that is coming in the future episodes with you. So I'll see you there.